Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we continue our discussions on lessons from the Golden Monk. Today, we'll discuss when your desires meet discipline with our speaker, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We have 13 members on Zoom, and we are live on Facebook. I have Kaylee helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome back to another episode of Success Sadhana.
Why, thank you so much, JM. It's a pleasure to be back here. Thank you, everyone, for joining, for helping out. Shweka, Rajiv, good to see you here. Roseanne, thanks for coming. Vicky, hi. Debbie, Ariana, RP, and SN, thanks for tuning in. And Rajesh. So, this is a success sadhana. So the idea of sadhana is that there's a practice, actually, in everything that we do and everything we endeavor for that gets us a step closer every day. And this is what's interesting about human life is we can self-determine. We can use our intellect and decide what are more worthy goals than others, rather than just going with the status quo or the default mode that our senses are in. And sometimes we say mind over matter, which is applicable because we can develop our minds and our intellects in such a way that we can discriminate and decide what are better values than others. So in sadhana, there's the idea that there's a sadhya, or there's a goal. So in the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who I've been referring to as the Golden Monk because sometimes his name is Gora, which means that he was golden in complexion, and he was a teacher who made the Bhakti Yoga practice prominent, and he gave it substance, especially through his followers who wrote many books about it. And these have been passed down over many generations through various teachers who've elaborated upon the teachings and also essentialized them, as did the Golden Monk, so that they would be applicable in the modern day. And so in a sadhana, or a practice that gets towards the goal, which he said was prema, he said that there are various ways you can define your life, various metaphors you can use. For instance, is it a race? And if so, what kind of race is it? Sometimes people say rat race. Other times we think of our lives as a ladder. Where are you climbing to? Where are you trying to get to? The Golden Monk talked about us being gardeners, which is a little more of a gentle metaphor, and it involves a cultivation, a way that we can apply ourselves, plant seeds, water the seeds, and so forth, and a fruit comes. That's how he described the human life. And then where's the heart? The heart is, or where is the field in which to plant the seed? It's in the heart. There's a lot going on with human beings, but a lot more available than sometimes we endeavor for. In fact, one of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is that we are more than simple organisms. We have the wherewithal to think about spiritual advancement rather than just go along with the dictates of the senses. So a lot of this we'll discuss today, or at least a little bit, since we have a short amount of time. Today's topic is about desire. What is it? And is it necessary to desire at all? And also we'll talk about discipline. What is discipline and what does it do for us? And what happens when you put the two together? Because they go together. And when they are in combination, when we are able to combine the two, that is, whatever desires we have with real discipline, then I'll argue in the class today that this is where we feel progress, or we find progress and we feel satisfied because we're moving in the right direction. So that's just a little preamble about success sadhana. Sadhana means practicing towards a worthy goal. And success, I guess, is defined by us according to our perspective in life. The Golden Monk's perspective was that the ultimate goal of life is to develop what he called prema, or love for the Supreme, which means our original divine source, which then includes everything and everyone. And there's a statement from one of the oldest books in the world called the Upanishads. Actually, particularly because there are many more than one Upanishad. One of them is called Sri Ishopanishad, which says that when you love your source and you understand everything comes from the same source, then you're able to love and appreciate everyone and everything. What to speak of even those things that appear to be out of place, you understand where they have a place based on the fact that they're connected to the whole. So, having said that, let's take a moment to go inwardly. A little introspection goes a long way. And first I want to pose a question to you, which is I've been experimenting with in traveling and doing various seminars. Have you ever had anybody come up to you and say, "Oh, you look tired"? And how did you feel afterwards? He's like, kind of maybe look in the mirror and go, "Oh, maybe I do look tired." Or if somebody comes up, "Oh, you look terrible." Of course, that probably might not happen that much, but somebody might haul off and say something like that. And how do you feel after that? The rest of the day second guessing yourself, "Oh, I look horrible." So what if somebody came up to you and said, you look spiritual"? So normally when I'm sitting with a group of people in person, I'll have everyone turned to another person and say, "You look spiritual." But since we don't have that, just write it in the text box. And assume that somebody's saying it about you. And how do you feel? Well, all of a sudden, if somebody walks up, and you try this as homework today also, go up to your roommate, your significant other, a friend, a colleague, and say, "You look spiritual." Now, someone may challenge me and say, "Come on, isn't this just an empty platitude?" Or maybe platitudes are empty. I don't know. Maybe that's redundant. But the fact is, someone might ask, "Are you being sincere?" Now, let me tell you how you can be sincere. I'm going to go back to the Upanishads. And the Sri Ishopanishad says that one who understands that our source is a conscious source and that everything has a purpose and that all living beings are actually spiritual sparks, part of the original fire. If one sees this and actually sees that the body, even the body we have right now, which is made out of earth, water, fire, air, etc., is being animated by the spiritual essence within the body. As soon as it leaves, then the body becomes dull. If you've ever been with somebody who left their body, then you'll notice that the second they're gone, you go, "Oh, nobody in there anymore. Living force is gone." You can feel it, you can see it. And this is exactly the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, which says, "Ukramantam stitam vapi bhunjanan va gunanvitam vimudan nanapashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshusa." That Krishna is referring to this process of leaving the body as utkrama, which means you just stepped out. Stepped out of your body. It's like, where'd you go? Well, that's a whole nother topic. Nonetheless, those, he says, jnana chakshusa, who have eyes of knowledge and see what's actually animating the body, look at someone, human or animal or plant, and notice that there's a life force there. A life force. And that life force is categorically different from the material mechanism that it's animating. And so when you look at anyone, says the ancient book, the Upanishad, if you have eyes of knowledge, if you're trained in knowledge, then you'll be able to see, oh, there's an anti-material, non-material essence behind that body that's animating it. And then when you say to somebody, you look spiritual, you won't be insincere. You'll actually just be what's called anupashyati. You're following the vision of these ancient wisdom literatures and appreciating the spiritual nature of the people you're interacting with. People, animals, plants, any living entity. You'll notice that they're all miraculous. If you look into their eyes and you see, there's somebody looking back at me. Plants, maybe not as much unless you're really in tune. And you'll notice that plants have their own will also. I know mine do. As soon as you cut back a creeper, it starts to come back again and reach out its little tentacles. You got wisteria right outside my window here, and it wants to live. It wants to expand and grow. It has some volition. So, how does that feel? You look spiritual. Try saying it to somebody, and what happens is they suddenly, instead of when you say you look terrible, and then they think, oh, I'm my body, and my body's not good enough, or you look tired, and it's like, oh God, it's really hard being a material body because it never cooperates with us. And as you move on in life too, you notice it cooperates less and less. So if you say you look spiritual, it brings people to this central awareness of the fact that, wait a minute, actually I am spiritual. We're not so far away from that awareness. We just project ourselves into the body and think, I'm this body, or we project ourselves into our houses and say, I'm this house, this property is mine, into my country, and even into the objects that we have in our life. These are my shoes. This is my car. I really am my car. Until I realize that that's just a vehicle. And same thing with the body. Okay, so does everyone agree to the homework? You want to try it? You'll try it out, JM? Okay. All right. So, in the sadhana of bhakti, there's a way in which one can utilize the the scientific principle called excitation, which means that when you bring a higher energy into and introduce it to another object, that the object of lower energy gets picked up by the higher energy. So in the process of bhakti yoga, there's use of what's called mantra, bringing a sound vibration that has inherently a higher vibration to it. And when we introduce it to our mental system and let it resonate in our bodies, then it brings us to a higher level of consciousness. This is the theory behind mantra. So let's try for a second. Sit up a little closer, a little straighter than you were a second ago. And just be aware that your body is at attention and your mind is at attention. Be comfortable. Close your eyes. And just for now, let go of any of the plans that you have. Just imagine you have no plans. You'll just be here for now. And any of the concerns that you might have. You might have picked up concerns from the world of concern around you. And those are floating around. Just let them go. And now you have permission just to be and be aware. And now take a moment to breathe. And just let the process of breathing bring you to gratitude that you have the wherewithal to breathe, and then it's nourishing you. And relax, but keep an alert mind, and bring your attention to the exhalation and the inhalation, and just relax. And when you're exhaling, you might say out mentally, and mentally say in when you're inhaling. And if you start to get distracted, then just sit a little straighter and you'll notice that immediately you come to attention. And breathe. And now, in this state, be aware that you're aware. Notice that you have an awareness. You're conscious. And consciousness can become aware of itself. And keep noticing that. And now let's note how your attention can go anywhere that you wish it to go. This is the fulcrum of power in your life. Where attention goes, energy flows, and you get to decide where to place your attention. So let's try. Let's place our attention on our left foot and just feel it. Notice that it has sensation. And because you're placing your attention there, you can feel it. Now transfer your attention to your right hand. Just fully concentrate there and notice that there's sensation in your right hand. And also notice that the hand is an appendage on your body, of your body. And that you can objectify it. We don't say, I hand. We say, my hand. Something we possess. But we're separate. We're the conscious witness within the body who can witness the hand. And now bring your attention to your thoughts. See if you can notice thought energy and just watch it as a neutral observer. Any thoughts that are there, just watch them and notice that you're the witness of them. They're not you. They're like any other kind of energy, like the breeze blowing around you or clouds in the sky. And now just synchronize the spiritual energies in the region of the heart. The Srimad Bhagavatam, ancient bhakti yoga literature says you can pronounce the one syllable mantra Om. So I'm going to make a vibration with my Casio. And then together, behind muted mics, I'll say the Om mantra 3 times in a row with that each exhalation. And you can follow with me if you wish. Inhale. Inhale. Now bring your attention back to your breath and notice that you've deliberately taken time for yourself, your spiritual self, to observe your environment, to observe your thoughts, to observe the body that you're residing in right now, and that you can repair to this place at any time. And rub your hands together to get some external sensation, and open your eyes and come back into the Zoom room. So now, let's go to a few slides. These are pursuant to the teachings of the Golden Monk. And as a reminder, we'll be talking about the importance of desire. What is desire, to start with? According to my dictionary, desire is a strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen. A strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen. Based on this definition, have any of you ever had a desire? I'm just checking to see if you're alive. Okay, Mayank gave a thumbs up. It looks like Vicky did too. And JM's smiling, so I'm assuming that means yes. Okay, Shubha and SN and Jesse all have desires. Okay, very good, you're alive. Let's see the next slide. This is an important philosophical point that we'll be going into. The symptom of a living being is desire. So this is, where do I get this from? Yeah, where are you getting this stuff from, Vaish? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes the symptom of the spiritual essence. Sometimes it's called the Atma. It's a unit of consciousness that's within the body. Sometimes around the world we call soul. And there are different names to point to the entity that animates the body. Of course, some people opine that there is no there. It's just a combustion that takes place because of a favorable circumstance, but there is no you. Well, the ancient bhakti literatures disagree with this. There is an atma, there is a self. You are a self, so the feelings that you have, the desires that you have, the attachments that you have, although they may be for various things that we could identify as being temporary, still it's indicative of your personality, your real self, that you do exist. And you can become aware that you exist. As we were just experimenting, you can become aware of your own awareness. And I think, therefore I am. And there's a sense of knowing, intuitively knowing that, yes, I exist. Someone opined, a philosopher, that, okay, maybe we're just an experiment within somebody's petri dish somewhere, but actually we don't exist. But we actually feel that we exist. And this feeling is corroborated. The feeling that we exist is corroborated in the Bhagavad Gita and the ancient wisdom literatures that say, yes, you do. And as a matter of fact, one commentator on the mantra Om said, Om is the big yes. It means, yes, you exist. You've always existed, you always will. Nothing can kill you, actually. And everything for you is positive if you just point your attention in the right direction. So desire is the symptom of a living being. And I'll say a little bit more about that. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to his student, Arjuna, that you can't kill desire. You can we'll do something else with it, which we'll talk about in a second. But desire, he says, Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatu tischatya karma karete havasa karma sarva prakriti jargunai. Just quoting the Sanskrit from the Gita. But he says Krishna in the Gita, that you're always active. And you may notice this in your own 24-hour cycle of life, that you always have some kind of activity. Now, I go to sleep at night. Do you dream? Yes. Now, in the Vedas, it's described how we have various states of material consciousness. There are 3 stages. One is our awakened consciousness. When you wake up in the morning, you're aware that you were sleeping and that you dreamed. Sometimes when you're dreaming, you don't know that you're dreaming. You may dream that you woke up from the dream. But when you do wake up in the morning and see, hopefully before the sunrise, yogis, and you notice the sun come up, you may say, yes, I'm alive. I'm awake. I know I'm awake. Some things you know directly. They're self-revealing. So there's an awakened state. There's a dreaming state. And you may even be aware that you're dreaming when you're dreaming and notice that, oh yeah, there are liminal states where you can see, oh, I'm in a dream. Let me wake up. And then there's what's called susupti, which is the deepest form of sleep where you're not actually dreaming. But you're not unconscious either. The way the Vedas describe it is you're conscious of nothing. So there's consciousness, but there's nothing really to be aware of at that point. So these are the three states, and then above that is called Turiya, or the fourth state, which is transcendental consciousness. And that can be reached through the practice of yoga. Self-introspection and the sadhana we're talking about. There are different kinds of yoga, different practices. So we're talking about bhakti yoga because that's what the Golden Monk taught us and which has been passed down. So there's never a time when we're completely inactive or that we don't exist. We always exist, always have existed, always will exist, and we're always conscious of something. We always have desire. So desire means I'm alive, means I want something. So let's go on from there with that thread already established. So the Golden Monk and his students who greatly expanded his teachings said, don't give up desire, rather purify your desire. So there's a big difference in philosophies because if you try to kill desire, you'll be disappointed. Desire manifests one way or another. It always comes out. It's part of the living experience, or it is the symptom of life, desire. So purifying desire means there are some desires that are better than others. And there's a preliminary study of this in the Bhagavad Gita, which I've been referring to a lot today, but I can corroborate it with many other wisdom literatures as well. But I'll stick to the Gita because it's a widely accepted non-sectarian writing about self-realization. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes desires within three modalities. So this is one of the aspects of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna speaks about quite a bit, and that is that the world is controlled by and made up of these three modalities that are called gunas. Guna is also translated as quality. It's sometimes translated as rope. And so those are sattva, rajas, and tamas, starting from the top quality down to the bottom quality. So sattva means clarity. It means virtue. Rajas means unlimited desires for material attainment that are never fulfilled. I'm constantly chasing, like the example of a hamster wheel. I had a hamster when I was a kid, and hamster, he'd start running on the wheel, and he'd go and go and go for an hour, 2 hours, just running. Where are you going? No, really. So this is the rajas, or middle mode, and the tamogun means desires that are self-destructive. We can observe some of these. There are desires that are for doing good for others. There are desires that are, I just want to, I have more. And there's desire that are self-destructive. I want to destroy myself. I want to destroy others. It's very generalized, but there are combinations and permutations of these three modalities. And according to the mode of nature that we've acquired, or the combination of modes, our desires may be manifested in these various ways. So the Golden Monk talked about how when we purify our desires, gradually coming up to sattva, then we can come to this fourth level, spiritual desires, where I'm desiring to reconnect with my original conscious source. And within that, as I mentioned earlier, there's a sense of universality, and our desires become aligned in spiritually. And then he said, this is the perfect way to express your desire. So you can be creative. You can obviously create things. You can build things. There's architecture, there's painting, there's music, there's cooking, there's dance, all these things. But when it's used as a process of reconnecting with our original conscious source, that it's done in what's called yoga or connection. And using our desires, our talents, our skills, our movement, everything for that is transcendental movement. It doesn't create karma, and it actually brings us the greatest happiness. This is the teaching of Bhagavad Gita and the Golden Monk. So let's see a couple more slides, and then I'll take some reflections and questions. If you have a question that you think could expand the conversation, you feel free to jump in at any time, because that really helps. And if you have a comment on anything you heard so far that you think is useful, please express that also. JM?
Sure. Thanks. If it's okay, I just want to take a couple of minutes and announce tomorrow's program for those who are interested.
Is that tomorrow already?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So we have an opportunity to spend an afternoon with Vaish. So we will have a very nice program. We had an excellent program last time when we met. When we came together, had some nice mantra music, some spiritual talk by Vaish, and of course we'll have vegetarian lunch included as well. So it's tomorrow, Saturday, July 9th, from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. It's in Palo Alto, so it's a central location for most of the Bay Area people. And if you're interested, please send an email to hi@bhakticommunity.com with the number of people who would be coming in, and we'll be gladly able to receive you. I will put the sign up sheet in the chat box as well. So again, it's an afternoon with Vaish, a very casual, friendly conversation tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Did you want to add anything more, Vaish?
Well, I think it's more, I get to have an afternoon with all of you, not the other way around. That's what I'm looking forward to. And yeah, it's really nice what we do here on the Zoom. At least I always get invigorated by it, but it has another dimension when we come together in person. That's undeniable. So I'm looking forward to it very much.
Yes.
Me too. Looking forward to meeting you in person.
Oh, yay. Thank you very much. I can't wait to see you.
Yeah, I just posted the sign up link on Zoom chat in case you're interested, or if you know anyone else who might be interested, please do share the sign up link with them, and they will be eager to receive you. So let me then go back to the slides.
Okay, so this looks a little dramatic, but the Golden Monk introduced an idea about how to advance. He was talking about on the spiritual path. And so I came up with this phrase, house, hunt, fire, desire, and I'll tell you how I got there. I'll show my work, like they say in math class, the teacher wants to see your work. So here's where it comes from. In one of the teachings of a student of the Golden Monk, he says, Krishna bhakti ras bhavato mati kriyatam yadi kritopi labdete tatalolyam api mulyam ekalam janmakoti sukritirna labdete. So what this verse says is that the price to pay for making spiritual advancement is your lolyam, which really literally means greed, intense desire to have it. That's the price. If you really, really want it, then you can, that's the currency you pay in, is your eagerness. And if you make that eagerness intense enough, it comes up to this level of lolyam. It's like, I want it more than anything. In fact, we could say that in any practice, whatever it is, that's what drives us. Because if you have that kind of intense desire, then you're able to overcome all obstacles. Now, the next part, I'll explain how I came to that. My teacher once said, in fact, he had been interacting with somebody and asked them to do some teaching in a foreign country that they weren't used to. And they said, we've never been there, we don't speak the language. There was nobody else to go at the time, so my teacher said, well, think of it like this. Say you move into a neighborhood where you don't speak the language, but then your house catches fire. One way or another, you'll be able to get help, because through pantomime or whatever means necessary, because you have such a need, an intense desire for help, you'll get help. And so he said, in the same way, wherever you go, if you have this kind of desire, which I then coined as a house on fire desire. So if you can develop a house on fire desire, it means decide what's best in your life. Take the time to sort out which kinds of desires you have that are in the mode of ignorance. I mean, does it really do you any good? No. There are things people do that are actually harmful to their health and their mental health, physical health, everything's like, is it really good to desire that? Well, then think about the desires in the mode of passion. I'm running on a hamster wheel. Once I get something, I just want more. It didn't actually satisfy me. And then you come to the mode of goodness, virtuous types of things, and then there's spiritual desires. So the Golden Monk indicated that if you develop an intense enough desire for advancing spiritually after having considered your existential situation carefully, then that's how you'll make advancement. And he added on, and actually this came from a student of Chaitanya, the Golden Monk, who he said that if it's available somewhere, that is spiritual contact, advancement, information, he said, run, don't walk. Don't saunter over there, I'll get to it tomorrow. He said, go now. If it's 1 o'clock in the morning, wake up, go there. Try for it, because life is short. You don't know how much time that you have. And so if you have this intense desire, someone says it's available now. So now is 1:01 in the morning. Okay, I'm going. That's house on fire desire. So that's the price, and that's what you do to get it. And everything else can be supplied after that. Everything else. That the ways and means, the information, the knowledge, guidance, everything else comes from that intense desire and willingness to go for it. Okay. So here's a few of the mechanics of desire, and then I'm going to go in the next section into the mechanics of discipline and what discipline's all about and how the two together are really a nice marriage. So the mechanics of desire, these are just a few elements, but where there's a will, there's a way. So that's just become cliche, but it's so powerful. If we pull it out and we use it, keep it as an affirmation, then we'll notice that by the intense desire I have, if I want it, I can find a way. There's always a way to move forward. Never make an ultimatum. It stops here. No, everything's possible if you still have the will for it. Keep going. So the next is for the mechanics of developing and maintaining desire, because yes, a red hot desire can go cold. So associate with those who are like-minded and who also have a strong desire for the same goal as you. This is one of the great secrets of maintaining a house on fire desire. Knowing that your desire may wane at a certain point, it may get cooler than it was, find people to associate with who have the same goal as you, they're like-minded, and have that intense desire. And by that association, you'll stay hot. So there's in the old days, people didn't have the kind of central heating that we have now, so they use stoves. And in a lot of places in the world, that's still the case. So say there's a cold climate, people would keep a little fire burning in their home during the wintertime. And because there weren't matches and other means to just immediately start a fire, you had to take a little trouble to start the fire. For instance, through friction and having a spark and some tinder, and then it would ignite and conflagrate. It's hard to say that word. Somebody help me out here. Conflagrate.
Conflagrate.
Conflagrate. It was in the fla that I was missing. Thank you, Rajiv. Good to have Rajiv here. He straightens things out. Okay, conflagrate. Before it conflagrates, between starting the fire and getting it to conflagrate, it takes some effort. So what happens when people's stoves would go out, the fire would go out, they had these little boxes on a stick. They would go to a neighbor and say, "Can you give me a coal, an ember that's still burning?" And they throw it in that little box that had some holes in it so that the ember had some air to breathe. And then they'd rush back home. They'd put it in their fireplace, and then they'd put some small wood kindling on it, and it would start again, rather than having it started all over yourself. So this idea of sangha, or association with people, have a fire burning. If you find someone that's turning, that's really intensely desirous of the goal you want to have, and you just go there, be there, and try to get proximity to that person. Try to be nearby and hear and emulate. Then your fire will be maintained. So that's one of the principles that the Golden Monk taught, was the principle of sangha. In fact, he said once in Bengali, "Sadhu sangha, sarva shastra hoy, lava matra sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hoy." So siddhi means perfection, and a sadhu is somebody who's seriously practicing spiritual life. And he said, if you get even, he used the word lava matra, which means a 14th of a second of association with that person, with that fire burning, said, then you can also attain perfection just by a little touch, because the fire will ignite. So sangha is important. And the third part? Your abilities will grow to meet your strong desire. I alluded to it earlier. I believe this statement actually is from Brian Tracy, but he pointed out that if you have a strong desire for something and you consistently pursue it, then your abilities will grow to support it. And so if you start with the desire and you cultivate the desire, then naturally you'll develop these abilities that will help you to pursue the goal that you're after. So I'll say this one, this one you just turned to, and we'll have just a few reflections before I do the finishing slides and make the conclusion. So desire without discipline is delusion. So let's just say we have some lofty desires for something, but then we don't discipline ourselves. We don't put it into practice. Then we get this sense of malaise where we know we're not doing enough or what we should be doing and so forth. And there's a way to remedy that, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the marriage of this strong desire with discipline is very fulfilling, because we're using our senses for our highest purpose, and we're actually going after what we know we need to go after. Even with 100 obstacles in front of us, we'll still feel optimistic because we know there's a way to overcome them, because where there's a will, there's a way. Well, let's see if there's a few reflections or questions, and I won't dally with them too long and that way run out the clock so we miss the last part. But it would be very stimulating to hear any of the thoughts that any of you have so far, anything you wrote down or noted mentally that you thought, oh, this one could work. Oh, look, Sundar's here. Please, Sundar, go ahead.
Hey, Vaish, thank you for the Thank you for the inspiring talk so far. I mean, I really liked when I saw the flyer today morning, marrying desires and discipline. It struck a chord with me because we may have good intentions, but if you don't have the systems or discipline in place, then, as you rightly said, we cannot make much progress on it. So it's so important to have good intentions, at the same time have the discipline and the systems in place so that we can fulfill or work on those good intentions.
Such a nice point, Sundar. A weekend before last, I was in Irvine, California, in Laguna Beach. I was asked a year ago to perform a wedding ceremony. And so I was thinking about it for a long time. It came up faster than I thought it would, just like this weekend came up faster than I thought. Everything goes fast these days. So in part of the wedding ceremony, there's a part in which the families come together and they join together the hands of the bridegroom and the bride. And, their two hands are joined. And there's also, they put a flower garland around their hands. It's the coming together of the couple and the families and so forth. And it's a beautiful part of the ceremony. And so I was just thinking, Sundar, when you were speaking about these two aspects, and when I thought of this, these two aspects, desire and discipline, we should have a wedding ceremony for the two. What do you think? We could hold a big ceremony somewhere in the world, maybe Silicon Valley or where anybody else is, and then we could bring the two together as a couple and put them together, put their hands together and tie them. Or at least in our own lives, we can think of, okay, I'm going to hold a wedding ceremony for desire and discipline. I'm going to get these two married once and for all, and then progress we shall call. Thank you, Sundar. Hey, where are you? Are you in an exotic place?
No, I'm just in my backyard,
well,
which is exotic.
California, it can't get any better than that. Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. Anybody else write anything down or that is you codified, you can just put back. When you put it back, it has twice the force, you'll see.
Shalu says, I concur with Sundar.
Oh, hey, you got concurrence, Sundar. Thank you very much, Shalu. That was great.
I liked decide what's best for you in your life, because a lot of times we fall into this little mode of just kind of like a floating spirit, just whatever comes our way and just go with the flow. But, I liked that because I tend to do that, just go with the flow. I think I might like to just pause and decide what is best for me in my life and take the action.
I love that. That's such a nice part to pick out. And I only have a couple short things to say about it. Haha. One is that I thought of this turn of phrase a while back and have presented it here and in other seminars, and that is to deliberate to be deliberate. It's spelled the same way, and you just pronounce it differently. So if you're deliberate about something, it means you've deliberated about it. And when I looked into the etymology of these words, there's a way in which deliberation requires considering the consequences of your actions. One thing takes you one way, another thing takes you another way. Where do you want to go? Plan it out. And then when you've planned it out, and here's the other point. I got this from Brian Tracy. I love his information on goal setting, but no, this is Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn once said in a very simple way, decide what you want and write it down. Decide what you want and write it down. If you take time by yourself with a legal pad and a pen, and you're like, what do I want? It changes your life instantly in that moment. You're self-directing. And then you can decide on what's the discipline, what's the sadhana to get me there. Thank you. That was really a powerful addition to the conversation. Okay, we'll take one more and then I'll go back to the slides.
Rajesh just posted a question. Any tips on how one can be better disciplined person?
Yes, that comes up in the last part. So shall I go right to that? Let's do it. So there's lots written about this. And then as far as putting it into practice, the mechanics of discipline. First of all, it's interesting to know that the word discipline comes from a Latin word, which means learner. Interesting when you discipline yourself that you can learn about the environment you're in, you can learn about people and so forth, because you have a purpose, and you're also more penetrating when you're consistent and disciplined, which sounds like a circular logic. But nonetheless, let me go into it. Conscious control over lifestyle. So this is one of the goals, is become very conscious of what your lifestyle is now, and then decide what you really want. So this is the point we were just discussing about being aware of what you really want to have in your life, and be self-directing, write it down. And even if you're miles away from it, as long as you're inching towards it, then you're going to be a progressive person rather than going with the flow, right? And so in that movement towards your goal, one of the techniques that's very helpful to me, and there's been, as I mentioned, much written about this, is to take small steps to start. And I call this the wedge principle. Wedge is one of the most useful tools in human history, in human society, and throughout history. And it has a very small end. In fact, the smaller the small end is, the better. For instance, a knife. When you sharpen a knife, you're making the small end smaller. And that's what makes it sharp. So when you start towards your goal, and you need to find discipline, which means that you're able to do something consistently despite what your unruly mind tells you should be doing otherwise. And you can start with the smallest of consistent practices. Consistency is more powerful than volume. If you're able to do something every day for a long time, then it starts to develop into a habit. And there's even information about this scientifically, about the way your brain has plasticity, and you start to develop neural pathways that support your practice. So start with the smallest types of steps that you can do consistently. And the ancient wisdom literatures say nityam bhagavata sevaya. So what that really means is your practice should be continuous and all the time. And then some of the great teachers say about that not everybody can do that. Most people can't. Therefore, they say at least do it once a day. Don't miss a 24-hour cycle in the little disciplined practice that you're going to implement in your life. And when you start that way, then you'll get encouraged, because nothing succeeds like success. And when you feel a little bit of spiritual strength from doing what you're doing, then you want to do it more and double down. It gives you traction. Next is correct practice makes perfect. So one of the ways to do practice correctly is to be very conscious. For instance, in mantra meditation, one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received is, when you're chanting, be aware that you're chanting. Because just like when you're doing anything else, you can be somewhere else while you're doing it. Don't do that. And also take the time to enunciate. And whatever you're doing, whatever the practice is, find out how to do it correctly, so that when you're doing it, it's taking you to a more voluminous, correct practice. And then remember that each discipline in your life affects all others. If you apply yourself somewhere, then you'll start thinking about applying yourself or doing things more correctly in other parts of your life, and cleaning up other parts where you feel sloppy and you're not doing it correctly. So if you start somewhere, it'll affect others. And the same thing also, if you let down in some place and say, well, it won't affect any other place, that's not necessarily true. If you let yourself down and you stop your discipline in some places, then it'll affect your overall attitude towards all your disciplines. So to answer the direct question, here's a few points. Deliberate on the best goal. This is called Sambandha Gyan. For instance, in spiritual practice and in the realm and context of bhakti yoga, there's a practice of listening to the wisdom literatures and the great teachers and saying, like, what is the ideal goal? Based on all the evidence in your life and based on your existential situation, something I like to say a lot, which means that, we really don't know where we are or where we're going. And also we're faced with non-existence, meaning that we could die at any time and lose all our stuff. So that's kind of a strong impetus. I know it got me going when I was a kid. I was thinking, right after President Kennedy got shot, when I was in kindergarten, I said, hey, wait a minute. Why am I going to all this trouble here, finger painting in kindergarten if it all ends like this? So deliberate very carefully so you can decide on your best goal. Once you have the target painted, then you're going to be happy because you're looking at where you want to go. And next is develop a house on fire desire. And I talked about the ways that you can do that by association, by considering how important it is to you and so forth. And then a third is to gain conscious control of your lifestyle. Lifestyle makes a huge difference. In fact, I was just reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the quintessential books on bhakti yoga, is that your lifestyle makes a huge impact on your consciousness. And therefore, in the section I was just reading, it talks about how analyze the different aspects of your life and see if they're in sattva or in goodness, including the kinds of things you put into your body, the kind of environment you have in your house. Upgrade it, because when you upgrade your environment and the kinds of things you're consuming, including what you listen to, and you've heard me say that ad nauseum, that's what directs our consciousness the most, is what kind of sound vibration you're taking in. If you listen to nonsense, you'll be thinking about nonsense. And if you listen to spiritual vibration, and there's a lot of variety, unlimited variety in that spiritual vibration, then your mind will become spiritualized. And these are some of the ways, very practically, that you can get started at any time. But anyway, we only have one piece of homework, and that's to walk out of here and tell somebody they look spiritual and see what happens. A whole conversation will ensue right after you tell them, and then they'll say, why'd you tell me that? And you say, well, because actually you're not your body. And your spiritual essence is shining forth through you and so forth. Well, JM, it looks like we did it again. We came to the end of an hour. And I'm so grateful to everybody who joined us today. Thank you very much. I know you'll have very busy lives, and it just deeply touches me that you take a few minutes to check in on this group that we have here. And we've been doing it since the beginning of the pandemic. So we've logged in a couple of years at least, right? And hopefully I will see you soon. One of the new parts of, apparently, although a healthcare worker, I was at that wedding in the reception and somebody said the end of the pandemic, and she's a doctor. She raised her hand and said, it's not actually post-pandemic. Seems like it though, but there's a lot more travel going on. So I hope I'm here again soon. And I look forward to seeing you if I am. Thank you very much.
Tomorrow.
Pardon?
Tomorrow. Tomorrow we meet, right?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. I'll be counting the minutes. Thank you very much, everybody. And by the way, there's a tradition where it just kind of caught on in the Himalayan mountains that yogis who do come out of their caves from time to time to get some fruits and roots, they'll notice one another on the high peaks, and they have this way of greeting one another to encourage them. And they raise their arms in the air and they say this phrase, which means keep the vibration going. It goes, Haribo.
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 Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See you
you. Have a
soon.
beautiful day.
Thank you.